Chapter 3. Animals. When the contract was made to lease the land, the search for farm pets was on. There were already 2 Great Pyrenees dogs named Lovely and Bear, and a hound named Roo. 3 cats, reference, Sammy and Peaches were all orange cats that camouflaged with the wood collection and kept the rodent population down. The first animals to join the farm were 4 East Frisian sheep ewes. Crystal and Jerry drove 5 hours on his birthday to pick them up. They were bigger than lambs at that point, yet they managed 3 in the back seat of a pickup and 1 on Crystal's lap in the front seat. The drive home had lots of breaks and rotating sheep in the front seat, so they all got a good hour each of loving snuggles and cuddles. They were beautiful, happy sheep. East Frisians have a very noble-looking face. They're not fluffy-faced, but rather smooth and shiny with a pearl opaque color. Crystal's youngest named number 34 Charles. The middle child named 000 Moose. The eldest showed no interest in naming 35, so she kept her original name on her paperwork, Kale. The 4th sheep was 00, so she was going to be named Bond, James Bond. However, it was decided Chuck Norris was far tougher than James Bond, and Chuck became her name. They were identical, but their personalities began to shine through and differentiate them. Lovely and Bear kept a good watch on them at the farm. Roo stayed in town the first year to be a watchdog of the wood compound and shop in town. The cats stayed out at the farm, as they had truly found their happy place. There was a small 3-bay covered space left behind that became the starting point of the animals' space. Old 2x6 drying frames with wire mesh were pieced together around the barn, creating the first fenced yard space. At first, there was an abundance of straight grain 1x2 fur. Crystal began fencing with it, and it didn't take long for Jerry to find discounted fencing. 4,000 feet of 6-foot-high fencing was acquired at an amazing rate, and fencing joined the list of activities along with building and moving. The middle child picked her home to be built outside the animal's yard. It was the first area to get fenced with 6-foot wire. Landscaping ties that were almost new were being removed from a low-income complex in West Kelowna. An entire free trailer load that worked fantastic as fence posts. A free camper was acquired and parked beside the kitchen box. It was decided the youngest kids could use this while they were visiting, so they had their own space until something more permanent could be added. One day, they would be old enough to assist in building their own boxes. The interior was painted white and sky blue. New curtains hung and laminate floor installed. Eventually, the exterior was painted with an aluminum roofing paint. It doesn't take much effort to make a small space a nice space. The summer wore on, with some days being too hot to work. There were visits to the neighbor's house so the children could use the pool and Wi-Fi. The lake and cliffs were a half-hour drive away and made for a good stop between moving loads of wood and newly acquired building materials. The groundwork was done for the children's 3 boxes throughout the summer as well. A variety of tents speckled the farm for overnight stays, although the children usually chose the minivan or truck to sleep in. At the end of summer, a terrible attack occurred, and it came from within. The male dog Bear had turned on the sheep and attacked them. He had bit at their ears and faces. It was a terrible day. He was taken into town and no longer allowed with the sheep. The sheep not only bore physical scars, they changed personalities too. Chuck Norris, who had previously been the flock's leader and protector, was the worst damaged. Her one ear was ripped halfway through, and her heart was no different. She now cowered and stayed away from the group. They all healed up eventually, but their ears told the tale of a bad dog. His fate was given more chances with additional training, but even living in town, he was becoming more vicious towards other pets and people too. It may have been the hormones, as it was around this time he impregnated Lovely. It wasn't until he had bit both his owners while meeting a potential rehoming adoptee it was decided he was too vicious to go to a new home. When winter came, the majority of sleepovers at the farm ended. The sheep went to live at the neighboring farm. They got a nice fence, 10 acres, to roam and find grazing under snowy patches. They also had a nice-sized barn full of fresh straw with a feeder box they excitedly returned to every night. Around November, a textile ram was added to the farm. It didn't take long, and the sheep were impregnated and expecting lambs in the spring. It was decided he would be named Ram Ram. 7 puppies were born in November. Lovely was an excellent mother and took good care of them. They all found homes on various farms. Some building occurred throughout the winter months. First, the middle child's box, and then the youngest. It was determined the original placement of the eldest box wouldn't work as it was situated too close to an overhead power line. A new spot was started near the animals' barn. It was long, slow work getting the boxes built in the snow, but the first 2 really took shape in the spring and were ready for moving in by July 1st, 2023, the official day of moving to the new farm. It was that warming spring that brought new animals to the farm. First, a pig. She was what they call a mini pig, a blend of Juliana, Kuni Kuni, and Vietnamese potbelly. She smelled like maple syrup and was thus named Maple. She lived in town with the family and became a very nice family pig with a funny personality. Then there were the ducks. The eldest was graduating soon, so she was given a small flock of 12 khaki Campbell ducklings as a business venture. It was only a matter of days, and the responsibility of caring for the ducklings fell on Crystal's shoulders. They never grew to be friendly ducks, always wary of any movement, and when left alone, they sounded like it was always comedy night, laughing deep, throaty, continuous cackles. Crystal's brother and his wife came to visit. It had been 20 years since they had seen each other last. It was a wonderful visit with little recollection of the past. Minor funny stories were mentioned, but nothing of negativity. Sometimes it really is better to leave the negativity of the past in the past exactly where it belongs. The last month of moving before July was a busy month. Daily, 2 or 3 trailer loads were moved out to the farm. There was an old cement plant on the property that they rented for a shop. Once it began filling up with wood, though, it became increasingly evident this space would serve the purpose of storage for now, and not a shop, since it had no power anyways. The shop was built in the farmyard between the animals and the courtyard. This made Crystal very happy, because now they could work any time they wanted without having to leave the farm daily. When you wake up, pour a coffee, and walk a few feet to your work for the day, that truly is paradise. Throughout the winter months, Jerry and Crystal had 1 day a week set aside for helping their new neighbors. After a morning of helping with whatever tasks needed assistance, Crystal was mentored in metaphysical healing for a few hours in the afternoon. It started with Thai massage and the energy meridians throughout the body. This branched off into other specific studies like reflexology. Next, they shifted to quantum touch. Breathing exercises to control energy combined with directed touch. They typically had one pain or another affecting them from a long life of driving tractor trailers. Everyone was a very willing patient most days. Next was Reiki Level 1, how to be a vessel of energy to heal others. Their neighbor truly was an amazing shaman. She had an extensive knowledge of plants, herbs, and their ability to heal. There could be a chapter dedicated solely to this wonderful human speaking of her skills and knowledge. Channeling and spirit guides were the topic of interest when spring was starting. Studies ended as focus needed to shift to the farm responsibilities. It was time to shear the sheep. Crystal used the clippers and Jerry held the sheep gently as the sheep were expecting within the next few weeks. It wasn't the smoothest, most beautiful job. At one point, the sheep moved, so Crystal jolted the clippers away from the sheep, toward herself. It made a nice W-shaped scar on her twisty tree tattoo. Thankfully, the sheep weren't injured, and the severity of catching one's skin was taught. This is why the sheep were never shaved smooth. There is no way those clippers were going anywhere near those sheep's skin. They looked like yellow clouds from the excess lanolin built up in that layer of wool. The sheep began lambing at the end of April, Kayla's birthday to be exact. With the sheep still living at the neighbors, they were in the best care. Kale was first with 2 baby girls. Then Charles, Moose, and Chuck had 1 baby boy each, including their father, Ram Ram. The farm now had 10 sheep. Chapter 4.